The alien arena was alive with sound, with lights, and with hunger for blood. Thousands of alien voices screamed together, shaking the air like thunder. The smell of dust, metal, and sweat mixed into the hot wind that blew across the great pit. It was the trial of champions, the oldest tradition of the Xylar Empire. At the center of that giant arena stood two figures. One was a mountain of muscle, the Xylar champion covered in shining scales and ancient armor. His forearms carried two curved plasma blades that burned blue in the sun. He was the pride of his people, undefeated for 10 long years. The other was a man, a human. He stood quietly, small compared to the monster in front of him. His armor was scratched, his left arm wrapped in a rough bandage, and his face calm. Too calm. The crowd laughed when they saw him. They threw stones and pieces of metal, calling him names: animal, ground ape, weakling. High above, on a golden balcony, sat the alien princess. Her silver eyes glowed like twin moons, her long hair braided with crystals. Around her stood her maids, soft-skinned and beautiful, their faces full of arrogance. They all smiled cruelly. This was no fight. This was an execution. The princess leaned forward and said softly, "Let this be quick. The human should know his place." Her champion bowed and growled, "For your honor, my princess." Then the gong rang. The sound echoed through the arena like thunder. Boom! The champion roared and rushed forward, his forearms spinning, blades flashing. Dust exploded under his feet as he charged. The human did not move. He only watched. The alien screamed louder, "You kill him! Cut him in two!" The first blade came down, but the human wasn't there. He slid to the side, smooth and fast, as if the air itself moved for him. The second and third blades missed too. Then for a short second, everything slowed. The human lifted his head, his eyes cold, his hand steady, and with one clean move, his plasma sword flashed. The alien champion froze. A thin red line glowed across his chest, and then his body split in half. The crowd fell silent. No one moved. Even the wind seemed to stop. The two halves of the great champion fell to the ground with a heavy thud, and the dust rose like smoke. The human stood alone, breathing slowly, sword still glowing. His face showed no joy, no anger, and only quiet peace. The princess stood up in shock, her heart beating fast. She had never seen such precision, such speed, such calm power. Her maids gasped behind her, their tails curling with fear. The guards near the ring raised their rifles, but the old priest of law lifted his hand. "Stop," the priest shouted. "The law of the arena cannot be broken. The victor claims the rights of the champion." The words spread like fire. The audience began to whisper, then shout. Everyone knew what that law meant. The human was now the legal master of all who served the champion's house, including the princess and her maids. The princess's face turned pale. "No, that can't be. He's human. The law cannot—" But the priest shook his head slowly. "The law does not speak of species, only victory. The arena chooses its own fate." Reed, that was the human's name, turned his head toward the royal balcony. His eyes met the princess's for the first time. They were calm, almost sad. He raised his sword in a quiet salute, then sheathed it. He said only one sentence, his voice soft but strong, carried across the silent arena. "I did not fight to own anyone. I fought because you forced me to." The princess's lips parted. For the first time in her life, she had no words. The crowd began to murmur again, louder and louder, half in fear, half in awe. The alien guards did not know what to do, an attack or bow. The maids behind the princess trembled, their tails flicking nervously. The sun fell lower, turning the sand red like blood. The old priest stepped forward, his voice echoing through the arena, ancient and powerful. "By the law of the arena, witnessed by all, the victor, the human named Reed, is now the rightful master of the royal concubines and all property of the fallen champion. The law is sealed." The human bowed his head slowly, then walked toward the exit gate. He did not smile. He did not look proud. He looked tired. The princess's hands clenched the edge of her seat. Shame and confusion burned inside her chest. She should hate him. She should order his death. But something inside her whispered that this human was not just a warrior. He was something else. Something dangerous. Something pure. As the heavy doors of the arena closed behind him, the cheers turned to whispers. Whispers of fear, respect, and curiosity. The Empire had witnessed something that day it could never forget, and the princess, She could not look away from the image burned into her mind. A human standing over her champion's body, his sword glowing softly in the red light. That night, when the arena fell silent and the stars covered the alien sky, one thought echoed in her mind again and again. He split my champion in half. But why do I feel like he split something inside me too? The news of the champion's death spread through the capital like wildfire. Every street, every hall, and every marketplace whispered one name, the human. No one had ever seen a creature so small defeat a warrior so powerful. To the aliens, humans were just traders, engineers, wanderers, never warriors. Inside the royal palace, the air was heavy. The princess sat in her golden chamber, her hands shaking as she stared at the glowing news hollow in front of her. It replayed the moment, the strike, the silence, the fall. Her champion split in half, the human standing tall and calm. Every replay made her chest tighten with disbelief and something else. Something strange she didn't understand yet. Her two maids, Mira and Lisa, stood behind her. Mira spoke softly. "Your Highness, the council will gather soon. The law of the arena must be read." The princess's voice trembled. "That law was made for warriors of our kind. It was never meant for him." Lisa, the younger maid, bowed her head. "But the law is old, Your Highness. It does not care who the victor is. The blood on the sand decides everything." The princess turned sharply, her eyes flashing silver. "Are you saying I should obey it? That I, daughter of the imperial line, must kneel before a human?" Neither maid answered. Silence filled the room. Moments later, the royal guards entered. "The council awaits you, princess." She rose, tall and graceful, wearing her ceremonial armor of white silk and gold metal plates. As she walked through the long corridor, every alien servant lowered their head, not out of respect and out of fear. The whispers followed her steps like shadows. The human owns her now.
He has the right by law.
A new age begins. The council chamber was vast, filled with elders, generals, and priests. The ancient priest who had spoken in the arena now stood at the center. His old voice carried power. "We are gathered by law to settle the claim of victory," he said. Commander Reed stepped forward. From the side door, the human walked in, calm and expressionless. His armor still carried dried dust from the arena. He bowed slightly, not in submission, but in respect. Every alien eye followed him, some full of hate, some full of awe. The priest raised his staff. "By the law of the arena, those who defeat a champion of the house become master of his possessions, slaves, and concubines. The law is older than the throne itself." The princess's fists clenched. "You mean to say that I—" The priest interrupted gently. "Yes, Your Highness. You, your maids, and the palace that belonged to the champion now belong to the victor." The hall filled with murmurs. Some shouted that this was madness. Others warned that breaking the law would bring divine punishment. The human stood silent through it all. Finally, he spoke. His voice was calm, deep, and steady, cutting through the noise like a blade. "I did not come to claim anyone. I came here to stop the war your champion started. If your law says I own lives, then I refuse it. I came to fight for peace, not for chains." The hall went silent. The princess looked at him, really looked at him, and felt something shift inside. His eyes carried no greed, no lust, no arrogance, only quiet pain like a man who had seen too many battles. "You refuse the rights of victory?" asked one general, his tone mocking. "Then you insult our law." Reed turned to him. "Your law makes me owner of people who never fought me. I don't insult it, I question it." "Maybe it's time someone did," the council murmured again. No one had ever spoken to them like that. The princess stepped forward, her pride burning. "You think you can change our customs, human? You may have won by blade, but you are still a stranger here." Reed looked at her quietly. "Maybe. But if strength is all that matters to your world, then your law is already broken. Because I stood alone and your champion fell." The words struck her harder than any weapon. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then the priest sighed. "The law stands. Until the council rewrites it, it must be honored." He struck his staff on the ground, sealing the decision. "Commander Reed, by law, you now command the house of the fallen champion, including his royal concubines, the princess and her maids." The princess gasped softly. It was done. The chains of honor, invisible but heavy, had closed around her. Reed bowed slightly again, his face unreadable. "Then by your own law," he said, "I claim not ownership but responsibility. Their safety will be under me. Not as slaves, but as lives under my protection. No one spoke. The alien stared, unable to understand such words. As Reed turned to leave the hall, the princess felt a storm rising inside her. She wanted to hate him. She wanted to see him punished. But his words echoed again and again in her heart. I claim not ownership, but responsibility. When he walked out, she felt her legs weaken. She sat down slowly, whispering to herself, what kind of human fights with such power and shows mercy like that? Outside the great palace, alien suns burned low over the horizon. The human walked into the fading light, unaware that his choice or his defiance of their ancient law had already changed the fate of an entire empire. And deep inside the palace, the princess whispered his name for the first time, not with hate, but with curiosity. Reed. The palace of the fallen champion had become silent. The sound of laughter, the heavy steps of guards, and the proud music of alien drums were gone. In their place, only the echo of uncertainty remained. Everyone in the royal household waited, wondering what the human would do next. Reed was given the champion's old quarters, a vast hall with golden pillars and a roof, painted with images of battles and conquests. But unlike those who came before him, the human did not order celebration or comfort. He walked quietly into the empty room, sat on the floor beside the glowing fire pit, and removed his armor piece by piece. Each metal plate fell with a dull sound, a sound that carried memories of many wars. Outside, the princess stood in the hallway with her two maids, Mira and Lisa. Both were nervous. The law demanded they present themselves to the victor. To them, it meant humiliation, to stand before the man who now legally owned them. The princess's silver eyes burned with anger. I will go, but not as his slave, she whispered. He may have won the law, but not my soul. Her maids bowed their heads. As you say, Your Highness, the door opened with a hiss. The human didn't turn around. His back faced them, broad but tired. His armor lay scattered on the floor beside a single piece of human technology, a small holopad showing a picture of Earth. A blue world, shining and distant. The princess stepped forward, her voice cold. You are called Reed, yes? The one who killed my champion. Reed turned slowly. His eyes were calm, his face unreadable. Yes, he said softly. But I didn't come here to kill him. I came because I was forced to fight. The princess folded her arms. And now you own me and my maids. That is what your victory means. Reed shook his head. No, I don't own anyone. The law may say that, but I don't follow chains. I break them. His words made the room feel colder. Mira and Lisa exchanged looks. No victor had ever spoken like that. The princess frowned, confused. Then why do you not release us? Reed sighed. Because if I do, your council will accuse you of dishonoring the law. They will punish you, maybe kill you. So until I find a way to end this law, you stay here. As guests, not prisoners. For a long moment, no one spoke. The fire crackled softly between them. The princess stared at him, searching his face. There was no arrogance in his eyes, no hunger for control. He looked like a man burdened by a promise he didn't ask for. You fight like a monster, she said quietly. But you speak like a priest. Reed gave a faint smile. War makes monsters. Surviving it teaches mercy. The words touched something deep inside her, something she didn't want to feel. She turned her head quickly. You speak too boldly for a man surrounded by enemies. Reed stood, towering but calm. Enemies don't scare me. I've seen what fear does to people. It destroys both sides. He walked toward the door and opened a small panel in the wall. Behind it was a medical kit and food, human rations, clean and simple. He placed them on the table. You haven't eaten since the arena, he said. Eat, rest, I'll take the floor. The princess blinked in surprise. The floor? You would give your bed to your concubines? Reed chuckled softly. I'm not that kind of man. Lisa's tail flicked nervously. Humans are strange, she whispered. Mira nodded slowly. Maybe too kind for their own good. The princess sat down slowly, watching him as he cleaned his sword, the same weapon that had ended her champion's life. But now, in the quiet light, it looked less like an instrument of death and more like a reminder of discipline, of purpose. After some time, she spoke again. On my world, mercy is seen as weakness. Reed looked up. Then your world has forgotten what strength really is. The room fell silent again. Outside, alien moons rose over the city, casting soft light through the windows. The silver glow fell across Reed's face, and half in shadow, half in light. He looked neither like a conqueror nor a savior, but something in between. The princess lowered her gaze. She had come ready to hate him, ready to curse his name. But now confusion filled her heart. She felt small, unsure. "Why do you care so much about what happens to us?" she asked at last. Reed's voice was soft, almost distant. "Because I've seen what happens when people stop caring. Entire worlds burn." Her chest tightened. There was pain behind his words, real, deep pain. For the first time, she realized this human was not just a fighter. He was a survivor of something far worse. Finally, he stood and turned toward the window. "Tomorrow," he said, "the council will call for blood again. They'll want revenge. Stay close. If they come, I'll protect you." The princess's eyes widened. "Protect us?" After all this, he nodded. "Even if you hate me," she didn't answer. She only watched him standing there, a single human against an empire. In that quiet room, something changed. The chains that bound her by law began to melt, not through power but through compassion. She whispered under her breath so softly even her maids couldn't hear. "He breaks chains, even the ones inside me." The palace that once echoed with pride now whispered in fear. Servants spoke in low voices. Guards avoided eye contact, and even the banners of the royal house hung motionless as if the air itself had turned heavy. The human had upset everything. One victory had rewritten centuries of alien tradition. Reed stayed in the champion's quarters, quiet, disciplined, and watchful. He trained every morning, his blade cutting through the misty air like a silver flash. Every movement was precise, controlled, never wasted. The maids often watched from the doorway, whispering to each other. They had never seen anyone move like him. The princess watched too, though she pretended not to. From her balcony above the garden, she often found her eyes drawn to him. The way he moved, the way he breathed, the strange calm he carried. She hated that curiosity growing inside her. Each time she caught herself staring, she turned away angrily. But outside her chambers, a different story was unfolding. In the dark corners of the palace, the generals and nobles gathered, their eyes full of resentment. The law may have declared the human victor, but no one truly accepted it. The champion had been a symbol of alien pride. His death was not just a loss, it was humiliation. "We can't allow this outsider to live," one general hissed. "He defied our customs, insulted our honor, and still breathes our air." Another, an older noble with scars down his cheek, whispered, "The people talk about him like a legend already. If he stays, the law itself will lose power. The throne will lose fear. So we remove him," a third voice said, quietly. "Tonight." The plan was simple, a silent assassination, hidden under the darkness of the twin moons. That evening, the princess was alone in her chamber, her maids preparing tea. But her mind was far away. She remembered his words from the night before. "If they come, I'll protect you." Why did those words feel like a promise instead of arrogance? Why did she want to believe him? Suddenly, Mira entered the room, her eyes wide with fear. "Your Highness, I overheard something near the guard hall. The generals are sending assassins to the humans' quarters tonight." The princess froze. "You're certain?" "Yes," Mira said, trembling. "They mean to kill him before dawn," Lisa whispered. "Should we warn him? Or let them? It would end the law and free you." The princess's heart twisted. This was her chance, her way out. If Reed died, the law would vanish and her honor would return. That was the logical choice. That was what her people expected. But when she closed her eyes, she saw his face again. Calm, strong, and strangely kind. The man who killed her champion could have treated her as property, yet he protected her instead. She opened her eyes, her voice firm. "No, I will not let him be murdered in the dark. That is not justice." Her maids looked shocked. "But Your Highness—" "Enough," she said sharply. "We warn him." The corridors were empty as they moved. The palace lights dimmed for night, leaving long shadows along the walls. The princess wore a cloak hiding her identity, her footsteps soft and silent. Mira and Lisa followed close behind. When they reached the human's chamber, the door was slightly open. Inside, Reed sat cross-legged on the floor, eyes closed, sword beside him. He was meditating, calm, unaware of the danger crawling toward him. The princess stepped forward quickly. "Human, wake up!" Reed's eyes opened instantly. His hand went to his sword out of reflex, but when he saw her, his expression softened. "Princess?" "There's no time," she said breathlessly. "Assassins. Coming for you now." Reed stood without hesitation, grabbing his plasma blade and strapping his arm guard. "How many?" "5, maybe more," Mira said, her voice shaking. Reed nodded once, calm as stone. "Then stay behind me." The princess frowned. "We came to warn you, not to fight beside you." He gave a small smile. Too late for that. At that moment, the lights went out. The corridor plunged into darkness, followed by the hiss of movement. Shadows appeared. The assassins, cloaked and armed, their blades gleaming faintly in the dark. The first came from above. Reed turned, parried, and drove his knee into the attacker's chest. A second lunged from behind, the human spun, slashing in a blur of blue light. The sound of metal and bone filled the hallway. The princess watched, heart pounding. Each movement was fluid, beautiful, deadly. He didn't fight like her people. There was no rage, no noise, no chaos. Only control. Only purpose. A blade flew toward her, and fast, silent. Reed moved before she could blink, stepping in front of her and catching the strike with his forearm guard. Sparks flew. He pushed the assassin back with a single punch. "Stay close," he said, breathing steady. Mira grabbed Lysa and pulled her behind a column, trembling. The fight lasted less than a minute. When it ended, the floor was littered with fallen assassins. Reed's arm bled from a deep cut, but he stood firm. The princess stared at him, unable to speak. You risked your life for me." He wiped the blood from his arm, voice quiet. "I told you I would." She stepped closer. "Why?" "You could have run." Reed looked at her with those calm, steady eyes. "Because honor doesn't end when the law does." Her throat tightened. For a long moment, they just stood there, surrounded by silence and the scent of burning plasma. Finally, she whispered, "You're unlike any being I've ever met." Reed smiled faintly. "Good. Maybe that's what your world needs." As the guards finally arrived, confused and afraid, the princess looked at the fallen assassins, and then at the human who had saved her again. Something inside her heart, once cold and proud, began to warm. For the first time, she wasn't thinking of revenge. She was thinking of him. The palace didn't sleep that night. The smell of plasma smoke still hung in the air. The sound of boots echoed in the marble halls as guards carried away the dead assassins. Whispers moved faster than light. The human was attacked. He survived. He fought like a demon. The council would meet in the morning, but everyone already knew the truth. Someone from the palace had ordered the hit. Reed sat alone in his chamber, cleaning his blade. His forearm was wrapped in cloth, the bandage glowing faintly with human nanogel. Every move was calm and steady, but his eyes told another story. Quiet anger, deep thought. The weight of knowing betrayal had come from inside the same walls he swore to protect. Across from him, the princess stood near the fire. The orange light danced over her silver skin and jeweled dress. She looked at him as if seeing him for the first time. "You should have let them kill me," she said softly. "Then this would be over." Reed looked up. "If I did that, I'd be no better than the ones who sent them." She turned away, her voice shaking. "You don't understand, human. You saved me once in the arena and again tonight. But every time you live, more of my people will die. You've humiliated them. They will never forgive you." Reed leaned back, his tone quiet. "Then maybe it's not me they need to forgive. Maybe it's themselves." The words hit her harder than she expected. She stared at the fire, trying to find anger but finding only confusion. He had saved her again, not because he wanted power or pleasure, but because he believed in something she didn't even have a name for. Moments later, Mira entered the room with a worried face. "Your Highness," she whispered, "the guards are searching the palace. They're questioning everyone. They think the order came from inside the council." Reed's voice hardened. "Inside?" Mira nodded. "They found a council seal on one of the assassin's blades. It wasn't a random attack. It was official." The princess's eyes widened. "Then the council wants you dead, even after the law declared you victor." Reed smirked slightly. "The law protects me on paper, not in practice. Power always finds a way around words." He stood, pulling on his jacket. "They'll come again. But next time they won't aim for me. They'll go after you." The princess's heart jumped. "Why me?" "Because you're the symbol," he said simply. If they can't kill me, they'll kill the shame, and that's you. Her hands trembled. Then what do we do? Reed looked at her, calm, steady, unafraid. We show them that mercy isn't weakness. At dawn, the council chamber filled again. The elders sat in their tall chairs, their faces full of cold fury. The princess stood beside Reed, her head high but her heart heavy. The high elder rose. Commander Reed, he said with venom, you've brought chaos to this empire. Our laws bend around you, our warriors fall before you, and now our palace bleeds because of you. You are a curse, not a victor. Reed didn't flinch. If your peace can't survive one man, maybe it was never real. Gasps echoed across the chamber. The princess felt her stomach tighten. He was walking on the edge of death, speaking to the most powerful beings in the empire without fear. The elder's eyes burned. You mock us, human. You dishonor our laws and steal our daughters. Reed's voice was cold now. I stole nothing. You gave me what your law demanded. I only refused to turn it into slavery. The princess stepped forward, her voice cutting through the noise. Enough! The entire hall turned silent. Her silver eyes glowed as she faced the elders. He speaks truth. I saw the assassins with my own eyes. I saw him fight for me, not against me. You call him a curse, and I call him honor. The room erupted. Shouts filled the air, disbelief, outrage, fear. A princess defending a human? It was unthinkable. One general shouted, You shame your own blood. She turned to him. Then let my blood burn if it must, but I will not call justice a crime. The high elder pounded his staff. Enough! You are bewitched by him, child. The human's influence has poisoned your mind. Reed stepped forward. If standing for mercy is poison, then maybe your empire is already dead. The elder's face twisted in rage. Then let the arena decide again. If you think your mercy has power, and fight for it. One last trial. You against our imperial guard. If you live, we end the law. If you die, all returns to order. Reed's gaze didn't waver. Done, the princess gasped. No. They'll send 10, maybe 20 of their best. Reed looked at her, calm as always. Then I'll fight for what's right. Like I always have. That night, as the sun set behind the great domes of the palace, Reed stood alone in the training hall, sharpening his sword. The sound of steel against stone echoed softly, a rhythm of calm before chaos. The princess entered quietly, watching him in the dim light. Why do you keep doing this? She asked, voice breaking. You owe us nothing. You could escape. You could live. Reed stopped, lifting his eyes to hers. Maybe. But where would I go knowing I left others in chains? She stepped closer, tears glimmering in her eyes. You're going to die for people who don't even respect you. He smiled faintly. Respect isn't the point. Change is. For a long time she just stood there staring at him, this human who had turned her world upside down. She wanted to stop him, to protect him, but deep inside, she knew nothing could move him from his path. When he turned away, she whispered through trembling lips, Then if you must fight, fight not just for yourself, but for us all. Reed nodded once, silently. Outside, thunder rolled through the alien sky, the storm before destiny. And as the night deepened, the princess understood the truth she had feared all along. The human who once split her champion in half was now fighting to heal her entire world. The twin suns rose red over the Xylar capital. Their light spilled across the marble towers like blood. The city buzzed with tension. Merchants stopped trading, soldiers gathered in silence, and even the wind seemed to whisper one name. Reed, the human who broke their champion. The human who defied their laws. The human who now stood against an empire. In the grand arena, the same one where it all began, millions filled the stands once more. This time there was no laughter, no mocking. Only waiting. The law of retribution demanded one final duel. The human versus 10 of the empire's finest imperial guards. The outcome would decide not just Reed's fate, but the fate of the law itself. At the royal balcony, the princess stood wearing ceremonial armor, silver with a crimson sash. Her face was calm, but her heart thundered. She hated what was about to happen, but she could not stop it. The council sat behind her, silent and cold. Reed entered the arena gate alone, his steps steady. He wore light human armor, repaired and scratched from battles past. His plasma sword hung at his side, glowing faint blue. When he looked up at the stands, he saw a sea of alien faces. Not enemies, not friends, just witnesses. The announcer's voice boomed through the loudspeakers. By the decree of the Council and the law of the Empire, the human known as Commander Reed shall face the Imperial Guard. Should he prevail, the arena law shall be rewritten.
Should he fall,
The human line shall be erased from our stars. The crowd erupted, not in cheers, but in roars of fear and disbelief. The princess gripped the rail, whispering under her breath, "Please don't die, human." The gates opened. 10 armored guards marched in, massive, towering creatures with 4 arms and burning energy spears. Their armor shimmered gold, their helmets reflecting the suns like fire. They were the Empire's pride, warriors bred for perfection, trained to kill without hesitation. Reed bowed slightly, out of respect, not submission. "Let's end this," he said softly. The battle began. The first guard lunged and fast, powerful aim, but Reed ducked, slashing upward, slicing through armor like paper. The alien roared and fell. 2 more came from behind. Reed rolled across the sand, swung his sword in a perfect arc, and cut through their legs. Sparks flew. Plasma met plasma. The air screamed with energy. The crowd gasped. The princess couldn't breathe. Every movement he made was controlled chaos, a dance of light and death. He was outnumbered, outmatched in size, yet somehow always 1 step ahead. But numbers began to weigh on him. 3 guards struck at once, surrounding him. His sword met theirs in a storm of sound. 1 strike burned across his shoulder. Another cut his armor open. He stumbled, blood staining the sand. The princess cried out, "Stop! He's had enough." The council elder hissed, "Silence, princess. The law demands blood." Reed staggered to his knees. The guards closed in, weapons raised. For a moment it seemed over. Then something in him shifted. He rose again, slowly, painfully. He stood tall, his shadow stretching across the arena. The crowd fell silent. Reed looked at the guards, his voice steady even through pain. "You fight for law. I fight for life." And with that he moved, and faster than before, driven not by strength but by purpose. He spun, slashed, blocked, struck. The sand turned red beneath his boots. 1 by 1 the guards fell. By the time the last one collapsed, Reed was barely standing, breathing hard, his sword trembling in his hand. Silence covered the arena. Even the wind stopped moving. Then, slowly the crowd began to rise, not to boo, not to cheer, but to bow. Thousands of aliens, once proud and cruel, lowered their heads in quiet respect. The princess ran down the stairs, her guards shouting after her, but she didn't stop. She reached the arena floor, running across the blood-stained sand until she reached him. Reed stood there, swaying, exhausted. When she reached him, she caught him before he could fall. "You fool," she whispered, her voice breaking. "You've saved us again, and almost lost yourself doing it." Reed gave a faint smile. "Guess I have a habit of breaking bad traditions." Tears filled her eyes. "You didn't just break them," she said. "You replaced them, with honor." The council descended from their seats, furious and trembling. The High Elder shouted, "This changes nothing. He is still an outsider." But before he could speak again, the princess stood between them and the human, her voice echoing across the arena. "Enough." Every eye turned to her. Her armor gleamed in the sunlight, her voice sharp as a blade. "This human came to our world as a prisoner. He fought not for power but for peace. He saved me twice. He could have claimed me by law, but he gave me freedom. And you call him the outsider?" The crowd murmured, unsure what to believe. She took a deep breath. "Then hear this. I, Princess Kalira of the House Xylar, declare before the council and before all, I will stand with him not by law, not by fear, but by choice." The arena fell into stunned silence. Reed turned toward her, eyes wide. "You don't have to," she interrupted softly. "I already did. You taught me what freedom means. Let me return it." The High Elder's voice trembled with anger. "You would bind yourself to a human?" She smiled sadly. "No, I would unite with one." The crowd erupted, first in disbelief, then in thunderous cheers. The old law, born from pride and blood, cracked and shattered in that single moment. Reed looked at her, exhausted but smiling. "You just started a revolution, princess." She met his gaze, tears in her eyes but a smile on her lips. "No, human. We did." That evening, the suns dipped below the horizon, painting the city in gold and violet. The council's old laws were written anew. No being, human or alien, would ever be owned by another again. And in the quiet garden of the palace, The princess sat beside Reed as he rested, his wounds bandaged. She looked at the stars and whispered, "You split my champion in half that day, but you healed something far greater tonight." Reed smiled weakly. "Maybe that's what humans do best, and we break things to build something better." She leaned closer, her voice soft. "Then build with me." Above them, the stars shimmered, two worlds finally meeting in peace. The twin moons of Xylar hung high above the capital, silver and still. Below, the city burned with new light, not the fire of war, but the glow of peace. The old banners of conquest had been taken down, replaced with symbols of unity. The people spoke in hushed tones of what they had witnessed. A human who fought without hate, and a princess who defied her own blood to stand beside him. For the first time in centuries, the empire stood still, listening to its own heartbeat. Reed sat in the healing chamber of the palace, wrapped in soft light from alien technology. His wounds were deep, but his spirit remained unbroken. His eyes stared out the wide window where alien ships hovered above the horizon like quiet guardians. The door opened, and the princess entered. She was no longer dressed in royal silk, but in a simple cloak, her hair unbound. The guards bowed as she passed, not because she demanded it, but because they wanted to. She walked slowly toward him. "You should rest," she said softly. "You nearly died." Reed smiled faintly. "Wouldn't be the first time." Her lips curved in a small smile. "But it might be the last. You've changed everything, human." He looked up at her. "No, you did. You had the courage to speak when everyone else was silent." She shook her head. "You gave me that courage. Before you came, I thought strength was about control, about fear. You showed me it's about mercy." The room fell silent for a long moment. Outside, the sound of alien bells echoed, a rare song of celebration carried by the wind. Later that evening, the council gathered again, this time not in anger, but in awe. The arena duel had rewritten their laws, but now they faced a greater question: what to do with the human who had won not just a battle, but their hearts. The High Elder, once bitter and proud, now spoke with quiet respect. "Our empire has lived by the law of domination for 1,000 years. But this human's mercy has broken that chain. The princess calls for a new age, an age of unity. The council must decide." All eyes turned to Reed, who stood before them without armor, only a simple human coat, torn and dusty. "I didn't come here to change your world," he said calmly. "I only wanted to survive it. But if my fight means no one will ever be forced into chains again, then every scar I carry is worth it." The chamber filled with murmurs, some of admiration, some of disbelief. Then the princess rose beside him, standing tall and proud. "He speaks truth. I once called him a beast. Now I call him my equal. The law of ownership ends today. From this day forward, every species, every soul, stands free." The silence that followed was sacred. Then slowly the council members rose, one by one, and bowed their heads. The vote was unanimous. The law was broken. The princess turned to Reed, her voice trembling slightly. "It's done. The law that made me yours has been erased. You are free to go wherever you wish." Reed looked at her quietly. "And if I wish to stay?" She blinked. "Stay?" He stepped closer. "There's still work to do. A new world doesn't build itself overnight." Her heart skipped. "You'd stay in an alien empire that once wanted you dead?" Reed smiled softly. "I've seen worse. And besides," he looked into her glowing eyes, "this world isn't so alien anymore." For the first time she looked away, her cheeks faintly silver in the moonlight. "Then stay," she whispered. "But not as my protector." Reed tilted his head. "Then as what?" She met his gaze again, her voice low and warm. "As my partner." Days passed. Weeks turned into cycles. The empire began to change. Human engineers from the nearby colonies were invited to share technology. Alien scholars studied human philosophy and art. For the first time, alien children played with human toys in open markets, laughing under the same sun. The once feared arena was transformed into a grand hall of unity, its walls now bearing the symbols of both worlds. And at its center stood a new statue, a human and an alien princess standing side by side, swords crossed over a book of peace. Reed often visited the hall quietly at night, walking among the lights and remembering how it all began. A fight, a law, a promise. The princess found him there one evening, standing before the statue. "You always come here alone," she said. He smiled. "Old soldiers like to talk to ghosts." She stepped closer. "Then maybe it's time you stopped being one." Reed turned to her, his eyes soft. "And what would you have me be?" Her voice was gentle. "Be what you were meant to be, the bridge between our worlds." He chuckled quietly. "That sounds heavy," she smiled back. "Then I'll carry half of it." They stood together under the soft glow of alien lanterns. No crown, no throne, no titles, just two souls who had turned enemies into allies and war into something better. Outside, the city lights shone like a new constellation. The people of Xylar and the scattered human colonies began calling this new peace the Covenant of Two Suns. At the grand celebration that marked its signing, the princess and Reed stood before the crowd. She held his hand, not as a ruler holding a servant, but as an equal holding another life. Reed raised his voice. "We started as strangers. We became enemies. But today we stand as one. Not because of blood, not because of power, but because we chose to." The crowd roared in unison, alien and human voices blending into one mighty sound that echoed through the stars. The princess looked at him, her eyes bright with pride. "You came here as a fighter, Reed," she said softly. "But you'll be remembered as something far greater." He smiled, eyes on the stars above. "What's that?" she whispered. "The human who taught a galaxy how to love." And as the fireworks lit the alien sky, their joined hands reflected in the twin moons above, two worlds united, forever changed by one man's mercy.